Welcome to today's episode of the Insurance, Life, and Everything in Between podcast. My name is Adam Brsan.
And I'm Chris Smith.
If you've yet to do so, hit that subscribe button so you never miss another episode. And if you love this podcast, don't forget to share it with a friend or colleague. We greatly appreciate your help and support. Good morning, everybody. Yeah, I can go through a little bit about my week. It was a little different this week, just kind of how I had things set up. I've had kind of like a side project for a while working on my deck. And it's been taking longer than expected, but we wanted to redo our deck. We wanted to put like new boards on, like the composite boards. And we thought all we were going to have to do is take off the original boards and put the new ones on. And when we took the old ones off, it turned into a much bigger project than anticipated. The deck was just totally put together very cheaply. We ended up pretty much tearing the whole thing down and starting from scratch. So just kind of taking a little bit longer than expected, kind of getting tired of working on it. Every weekend we've been working on it. And so this week I just decided I was going to devote my mornings to working on the deck to try to get that done. And, and I was thinking about it. I'm like, well, heck, with our appointment setting, I could start my day at 2:00 in the afternoon and have them set me up appointments on the hour from 2:00 until 7:00. And I mean, that would give me 6 appointments a day. So even if I'm starting my day at 2 in the afternoon, I can still be highly productive, sitting in front of a lot of people. Uh, and you know what? I mean, our appointment setters, they did a great job this week for me. I did have a whole bunch of leads for them to call. I had about probably 50 new leads for them to call this week. And so they had quite a bit to reach out to, those leads along with leads from prior weeks. But yeah, they did a great job with setting up appointments. I think every day they just about booked every hour from 2 to 7:00 at night. So I think that gave me a total of probably at least 5 to 7 appointments every day. And like I said, I didn't even start my day until 2 in the afternoon. A good portion of the appointments were home. Uh, it was just honestly, it was one of those weeks for me. It wasn't highly productive. I don't think it was because I started late, because I had plenty of people to see and plenty of appointments, plenty of people to sit down with. It was just, I don't know, the people that I was sitting with, they just, I don't know, they either already had coverage and they just weren't interested in more, or they couldn't afford anymore. I couldn't figure out ways to get them to move forward with additional coverage. Sometimes I can just kind of tell, when I sit down, if it's even worth it or not, or if it's just one that I just need to move on to the next. There were a few where I showed up and like yesterday, this guy, well, I don't want to sit down with you. Just give me the information. Like, well, I don't really have any information to give you without sitting down and go through it with you. It'll take like 5 minutes. And he was just adamant about me leaving him something. You want to sit down? I'm like, okay, well, I don't have time for you. And I left. So I had some experiences like that. I also had a few that were probably some decent follow-ups. I don't depend a whole lot on follow-ups. I kind of feel like in our business, if you don't write that piece of business the first time you're there, there's a more than likely outcome that you're never going to see that person ever again. But I did have a few that seemed promising. One guy, he just couldn't find his banking information. And I think he was pretty straightforward with me. And I mean, he's looking for it. He couldn't find it. And I asked him, like, do you have your taxes like from last year? And he said, yeah, I do. He said, come back tomorrow and I'll have them for you. Because he didn't, I don't know, he had to look for them. Same thing. I couldn't get him to go get him at that time, but I went back the next day. He had his taxes. Unfortunately, his banking information wasn't in there. I guess his refund was deposited straight to H&R Block or something. So, anyways, I told him, well, go get your banking information over the weekend, and I'll come back and see you next week. And if you don't have it, when I get there, I'll get there early enough where I can just take you to the bank and we'll go get it. And he said, okay, fine. And I mean, I know this guy, it's going to happen. I mean, he wouldn't have gotten his tax information for me with the banking information if he wasn't serious about it. or like I said, unfortunately, didn't have the banking information. But I mean, he gave me that information with the thought in mind that that information was provided in there. But anyways, I'll be going back next week. I called him yesterday. I had a little bit of time, and I said, if you're around, I got about an hour. I could come by right now and take you to the bank. And he said, well, I'm going to be going over the weekend. I'm going to be going to get that for you. So just come by on Tuesday. So I think it'll happen. Um, so that'll be a decent sale. The way that my appointment started for the week, I mean, I was feeling pretty good. The first one I went in on, I rode. So that was my 2 o'clock appointment on Tuesday. And that one was, I think it was like around 75 or $80 a month, something like that. This lady, she had a $20,000 policy with Trinity. It was a whole life policy. It was a good policy. I mean, she had it for a few years. There was really nothing I could do with that. The rate was really good. But the way I was able to sell her was on the platinum product with American Amicable and that Everest. Uh, that's really been working well for me lately. Where if people already have coverage, sometimes they don't feel like there's a need, like they don't need any more coverage, like they feel like they have plenty. That's when I start to dig a little bit deeper. And I always ask them about who would be the one handling things for them when the time comes. And I'll always ask them if the person that is going to be handling things, if they've ever had to plan a funeral. And either way, if they say yes or no, the next thing I ask them, what do you think that day is going to look like when they have to plan your funeral? And it really gets them thinking. Like I paint that picture where then they're sitting there just kind of thinking about it, like, wow, I've never really thought about that. I don't like, and this lady was like, my daughter's going to be devastated. She's going to be devastated, and it's probably going to be hard on her. And then I get into talking about how a lot of the funeral homes pry on people grieving. They tend to maybe not overcharge, but they add stuff that just isn't necessary to try to use up a lot of that insurance money. And I went over the Everest with her, told her about how these guys just kind of step in and go to bat for the family. They're real good about negotiating prices. They help you put your whole funeral plan together ahead of time, where when that time comes, all your daughters are going to have to do is make that one phone call. And that's it. And then the next thing she's going to have to do is show up at your funeral because everything's already handled for her because you took care of it for her ahead of time. And I mean, this lady, I mean, she loved it. Everybody I show this to, honestly, for the most part, they love it. If you present it the right way, like I said, paint that picture, let that really hit home with them, and it really sells itself. So without that in my back pocket, I don't know if I would have wrote her any additional coverage. She had 20,000. She felt like she had enough coverage, but she didn't have something that was going to help her daughter in the time of need on the emotional side, I guess you could say, more than the financial side. And that's where the Everest will step in and really help and see to it that they can make things a lot easier for the family when the time comes. So like I said, without that, I may had not written that piece of business. The rest of my day that day was pretty much a wash. There were maybe some no shows, maybe some tire kickers. The following day, I had a few promising appointments. Like I said, one that I think as well was probably going to be a pretty good follow up. It was just one that I just couldn't close, unfortunately. The lady's mom just died like back in December, and she didn't have insurance, and this lady pretty much had to pay out of pocket for everything. She's a nurse, she had money saved, but I mean, she told me like overall, her mom uh, was born in Nigeria. That she ended up having to ship her home. She spent like 25 to $30,000 total on the funeral. So same thing. I went through the Everest with her, and just the same thing. I mean, she loved it. She just wasn't quite ready to move forward. I think I'll be able to get that one next week, along with another that I like, that other guy that I told you about that just needs to get me his banking information. So those will count towards next week's production. Unfortunately, this week I think I only wrote around 1,500 in premium, which is a very low week for me. But that happens. I'd rather take a couple than nothing at all. And I know I'll make up for it next week by by having a better week. And but rinse and repeat. I'm going to have more leads coming in. The appointment setters will be able to call additional leads. I don't think I'll have to take off my mornings to work on the deck. I'm right now. We'll see what happens over the weekend, but I'm hoping that I get enough done where I can just kind of put in that full day, 3 days in a row. But I am going to change the way that I put my day together, where rather than have my appointments set out in 90-minute increments, I'm going to go to 60 minutes like I did this week, where I had those appointments set from 2 to 7. Uh, if I'm not working all on the deck, like I said, I'll have them start my appointments at 9 in the morning, and have them set them on the hour, 9 until 6 o'clock. I mean, that'll really put me in front of a lot of people, as long as there's enough leads to contact, and as long as they have enough time to be able to set all those for me. I mean, I know I'll have a huge week next week. And the difference, like just the 90-minute increment, I noticed a huge difference going to the hour. Uh, I mean, because you're going to have people, like I said, like I had the one guy that just shut me down at the door. It was an appointment set. Couldn't get anywhere with the guy. It was almost just like a cold door knock getting the door slammed in my face, where right away that freed up time where I just moved right on to the next appointment. Uh, where if I would have got in the home, I probably would have been late to the next appointment. So then now I was early to that appointment. And so, and the appointment setters, they give people like a window. They tell them it'll probably be within 30 minutes of that time. There were a few appointments I showed up at over an hour after the scheduled time. The people were home. They didn't even say anything about it. They didn't even realize that I was late. I mean, they're just sitting around doing nothing anyways. So, um, so it was not an issue. But like I said, so I would say the one thing that the main thing that I learned this week was set those appointments on the hour, as long as they're direct mail and they're close together. Squeeze more into your time. I even had a few Thursday that I had double booked, where I had like maybe a follow up from the day before. The appointment setters still set me up appointments for the same time. And I was still able to work it all into my schedule. Like I said, I might have been a little bit late to a few, but I didn't just like, I had one, I think it was like a 6 o'clock appointment. It was the last one that I had on Wednesday, and I showed up at like 7:30 at night. Um, but they were home. So, I mean, it just kind of worked out that way. But yeah, that's what I'm gonna do from now on, is just set them up on the hour. See if the more they can get in touch with, the more appointments they can set, the more productive I'll be. And if I'm late to an appointment, I'm late. Like I said, I mean, I don't think one person that, if anything, they noticed more when I was early than when I was late. Like I had one yesterday. It was a 7 o'clock appointment. I got there at 6 o'clock at night. Wow, I wasn't expecting you till 7. But other way around, like not one person said anything about me being late. So yeah, I'm going to have them just fill up that schedule as much as I can. And I think that'll lead to a very productive week next week that will make up for the slow week that I had this week. Like I said, I don't think it was because I started at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, because every day I had about at least 5 or 6 appointments. But it was more just, unfortunately, the people that I sat down with, they didn't turn out to be great candidates to move forward with a plan. So that's about all I got for you this week, Chris.
Well, I had a couple interesting observations that I wanted to make with our final 4 or 5 minutes. Um, it's that you're utilizing the team to be more flexible when necessary. I know I had this conversation with Ricky a couple months ago, as he was planning for summer, and it was to keep up your lead flow, keep up your engagement with the appointment team, and when you need to be flexible, they're going to help you be more flexible. Even if you're dialing for your own appointments, utilize the fact that you can be flexible with your time and still work when you didn't think you might have been able to before. I think the other thing that's interesting is you're making these comments, these observations about the 60 versus the 90-minute mark. And what that is an example of is being 10% better this week than the week before. Maybe you didn't write as much business as you wanted to write, but you made this skilled observation that's going to make you 10% better next week. Sometimes it doesn't always come in the form of premium, but it might come in other improvements you make in your business. We've talked a lot about this week the extra question, extra products, extra add-ons, but in many cases, Everest or Sequoia is that extra question, and you're able to leverage that to add additional business. The minimum plan on American Amicable is $2,500, the minimum face amount that is. The average cost is probably 15 or 20 bucks. So Adam, even if you only wrote a $15 or $20 application and you sold Everest using the extra question in that sale, doesn't it at least cover your lead cost, the appointment cost, and plant a small flag in that home for future opportunities?
Yes, and that was actually, I mean, the person that I really sold based on that Everest, that was what I brought up to them, was that, you already have this policy that's probably enough to cover everything, but this Everest, I mean, this is gonna add value not only to the new policy, but to the one that you already have, because they're gonna be stepping in, they're gonna be saving the family some money. And so that money that you already have in the other policy too is just going to go that much further. So I was able to write her, like I said, I think it was at least 10,000. She already had the 20. But yeah, she was happy with it. The 10 wouldn't have been enough to cover everything, but because she already had that 20, like I said, the Everest is really what sold the whole thing.
People buy value, and whatever the value is that they are buying, they absolutely do buy it. As redundant as that seems, I think it's important for us to recognize the power of value, not just rates, not just face amounts. Maybe the value is you as their agent, but people eat up value. Last thing I want to throw your way this morning, this is how I opened the call. Do you feel like this industry, this world, this time that we're living in, people are either being pushed forward in the business by the people around them where they want to go, or they're going to end up being pushed out of the business because they're not looking to get out of their comfort zone?
Yeah, I think so. Well, and I think that we try our best, I think, to work with our agents and let them know that we're here for them, and we really do want to see them succeed and make it long term in the business. So, I think we do a lot to try to help them move forward with things. I think maybe some of the places out there, they don't get the support that they need. If they're new to the business and the communication isn't there, sometimes they're in and out of the business. And unfortunately, it's sad when, I mean, we see the opportunity in this business, the sort of money that you can make. I would just hate to see someone that's talented, that could be really good, that could end up long term making a lot of money, just giving up on this too soon. So, I do what I can to help my guys, to try to keep them motivated, to push them to move forward. I mean, if it wasn't a good business, I've always said, I mean, after 21 years now, I would have found something else to do. But I've just always felt like, outside of like being a professional athlete, I mean, I can't think of another career out there where there's the opportunity to make the sort of money that you can make in this business.
Absolutely. Remember, attitude and activity are the two things that you can control in this business. And typically, your attitude suffers if your activity suffers. We have an option, no matter what option you pick, to push you forward into next week. We're all better, even in leadership, because you guys push us forward as well. Adam, appreciate your lead today, and we'll see you all back tomorrow.
And this concludes another episode of the Insurance, Life, and Everything in Between podcast. If you like what you heard, don't forget to subscribe, share with a friend or colleague. And if you have any comments or suggestions for future episodes, please leave those too. Any input is greatly appreciated. Thank you.